Welcome one and all to the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast. Today is episode 12, Mushi as far as the eye could see. My name is Louie and I anything can't do right since because Pickles. I'm joined with my co-host.
No, I didn't forget to give the score last week. It just took a great deal of effort to figure out the amount.
Tom.
I wrote down the amount and then my computer accidentally consumed it, so I don't have it anymore, so I can't give it anyway. Hey everybody, how you all doing? Welcome back to another episode of the show.
Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who's new, we're going to talk about 3 topics this week. The first is going to be things we've been doing, listening to, reading, kind of just what we've been up to. And then we're going to do a discussion of when to drop a series. So we'll do that for a little bit. And then we're going to do a review of Mushishi, Volume 1 and 2. So, Tom, what have you been checking out this last week?
So, I've been reading a couple of things. So, first off, I finished Housekeeping Mage in Another World, Volume 1. It's a light novel.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's not one I expected to pick up, but I think I got it on sale. It's taken me a while to actually get through it, not because it hasn't been good, but I sort of started reading it and then took a break and then just didn't get back to it. It is an isekai where a Japanese woman is sent to a very standard fantasy world. However, she gets sent there for no explicable reason and gets nothing. She literally just wakes up in this fantasy world. No language, no powers, no anything. And so this 25-year-old Japanese woman is just there. And the story takes place about 4 years after that. She's figured out how to speak the language. She's figured out how to use magic. But she is desperately trying to figure out how to survive. And what she ultimately ends up becoming, due to a number of different things that happen before the story starts, is a quote-unquote housekeeping mage.
Okay.
She doesn't have the magic to actually really cast spells or do anything to help other adventurers. Because, of course, Adventurers Guild exists. So what she does is she basically takes care of people's camp. What she's found that she can do that most other people can't do as well is she can use her magic with an incredible amount of control. So what she'll do is she'll basically walk along with the party, and then when it's time for camp, they'll set up their tents, but then she'll prepare food for everyone. She will get beds ready for everyone. She'll physically build a bath and take care of their laundry and do all of these things while traveling with them. So basically she helps out everyone else at camp while they're traveling, and she starts figuring out how to make dehydrated foods and things like that to bring with them so that she can make these really nice meals for everyone to eat. For adventurers who are like, yeah, I've got my hardtack and my dirty boots, and we're going into the woods for a week. Once the higher level adventurers realize how much nicer it is, because they'll go out, they'll be in the middle of the woods, and it's like, I've washed all your clothes, I've set up a comfortable bed for you in the middle of this forest. Oh, and I created a full hot spring next to the camp that you can just go and use for today.
Okay, yes, this sounds familiar now.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned to you off the show before.
Yeah.
The story ultimately is this sort of romance between her and an adventurer who's quite skilled, and it's very much a romance story between the two of them. Hey, if we go back to let's talk about the information behind manga, it is a josei series. So I've never read a lot of English romance novels, by which I mean never read any.
Okay.
But this has that kind of a feel of almost overwrought, almost overly dramatic, almost endlessly talking about people wanting to like each other, but tiny things getting in the way that causes nothing to move forward. But it's not. It's a very interesting relationship. Who the two main characters have been in the past, even in this first book, is a huge part of how they get along with each other and how well they get along with each other.
Okay.
But there's a lot of just interesting things, and it's a nice isekai where everything is brutally hard work to get.
Okay.
The isekai character is basically the weakest and least powerful and least useful person around. And all of the other people around them are incredibly powerful. But the things that she can do are still very unique and very special. And even though this is a romance story, there are still adventures and there is still big action scenes that are just as good as any other isekai. It's just following a character or two characters who the entire story is about them maybe admitting that they like each other.
Okay. So it's less of a power fantasy and more of just fantasy.
Very much so. It is exactly the sort of standard Middle Ages Western Adventures Guild fantasy world.
Yep.
But it's not. The main point of the story is the characters' relationships, but they still have all the other things you sort of expect from that world, and those are still well done. But
cool.
it's not a power fantasy in any stretch of the word.
Nice. So it's more of slice of life kind of thing? You're just following along, or is there an overarching story?
So in the first book, there's a couple of overarching plot points.
Yeah.
The first one is just the two characters meeting and finding out about each other, and a few small adventures that come together. And the second one is a trip in winter to bring her familiar back to visit others of his species, because he's a slime that lives out in the forest. But this first book doesn't really have a main overarching plot, but a lot of things do happen, and there's a lot of starting to see the things that have happened in their past that have caused them to become the specific people that they are.
Okay.
It's the overwrought romance of, like, they're both emotionally damaged people who don't know if they can love again, but maybe just this one time with this other incredibly handsome / incredibly beautiful other person right here next to them who clearly has feelings for them, but is just holding back just enough that maybe they don't know for sure if it's real. It's that kind of a romance, but everything going on in the world around it is good, and the details you start to hear about they don't know if they can love again. Well, yeah, for the Japanese woman, one of the things that happened to her was her old party of adventurers worked her until she almost died and then left her to die in a dungeon.
Yeah.
It's actual, like, okay, yeah, that's really tragic. That's kind of terrifying. And for the main male protagonist, you don't know what he's been through, but you see a couple parts of it, and they both seem pretty bad. One is like an interpersonal relationship that was awful, and the other was, oh yeah, he worked as a spy and caused a revolution in a country that killed thousands of people. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see that could be hard to handle. Yeah. Even for, this is another one of those things that we talked about where this is not a genre that should be targeted to me, but even just from the very beginning when I started reading it, this is a very good story. This is very well written. It's a lot of fun. If you have any interest in it, you should try the first book.
Okay.
And the first half of it, which I read a while ago, I couldn't put down. It was once I got through that first section, like, okay, I'm going to take a break for a minute. I'll read it more tomorrow. And then it was a month and a half. But it's very good.
Cool.
After that, I read Mushishi 1-3 for reasons that you may already know. I'm not going to talk about that right now. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about it in the big topic, at least books 1 and 2.
In case you weren't listening.
3 continues to be good. So
cool.
Since we'll talk about 1 and 2 later, I'll talk about 3 and say it continues to be good. It's a great series. It's one of my favorites. This is all rereading for me, but it was good. And then, so I bought all of Shaman King last week on sale. On sale in a bundle.
Bundle.
Yeah. So I got all of that and I started reading it, and I got to book 29.
How many are there?
35 in English.
Okay.
Then someone asked to delay the recording by a day. So I read 29 to 35 yesterday.
Is that the whole series or just the ones in English?
That's the whole series. Yeah.
Okay.
They're all translated in English. I think the last 2 books were written later because I remember someone talking about how there was a really weird ending to the series. And even the author mentions like he got a chance to come back and finish it. Most of the last book is actually like mini stories from one of its sequel series, not actually from the sequel series. It's weird.
Yeah. You've read more than I have. I don't know if I ever actually read all the way to the end. I like it. It's really good.
It's really good. I'm glad I got it all at once because I do not think I would have finished it if I had to pick up one book at a time, even if it was cheap, because the middle of the story is very there, and that's about it. This is a story that has managed to make me not want to read a tournament arc.
Yes, that is the one problem with that series, that most of it is a tournament arc.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like 2/3 of the series is a tournament arc.
Yep.
And most of the time in that tournament arc, all these huge fights are not even part of the tournament. The tournament fights are the tiniest part of the tournament arc. And all of these things about the tournament arc that are really cool, like, oh, it's going to be a 3v3. Pretty much every 3v3 match in the tournament is actually a 1v3 where one person just curb stomps the other team.
Typically,
or a 1v1 into a 1v1 into a 1v1 into a 1v1.
Yeah.
Like, there's no actual, like, them working together. And the early fights in Shaman King are really neat and interesting. They kind of get dull as the series goes on, I think. But still, I'm glad I read it. The characters are pretty good.
Yeah.
Overall, it's a series where it's like, yeah, I finished it. I'm glad I finished it. I don't know how much of it I want to see again. And there's some interesting themes and there's some interesting ideas, but I'm almost more glad that I'm done than I was reading it. Although the end couple of books is really good. A lot of stuff circles back on itself. The actual ending is still really weird. But it's also not at all what I expected, and kind of a really good way to end the story.
Okay.
That you don't expect. I think it's weird, and it doesn't totally work, but it kind of works, and it's at least different.
Okay, yep.
It was fun. I finished it. If you like it, that's good. If you've been enjoying it, it never gets to the point where it's painfully bad, but it felt like a slog. After I read 25 books of it in the first section over the course of a couple of days. And I look back and I'm like, I don't really know why I read all of this, but I did. And then the ending was like, okay, this was actually worth it. I'm glad I got to here.
Okay.
So I have mixed opinions on it, but it's overall good, but not great.
Fair enough. Yeah. I remember liking the beginning. And
the beginning's excellent. The beginning's fantastic.
I don't remember how far I got before. I think I might have been reading it as it was coming out. It's like, okay, I'll just wait. And then I just never got back around to it. So I'll finish it at some point. I know the anime ended differently.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And I believe the manga had one ending because they had to bring it to a close suddenly. And then later on, he expanded it and finished it out to a more full ending.
Yep.
And it has the kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But
and there's a sequel, or 2 sequels?
Yes, there's 2 sequels. There's Superstar and there's Flowers. Superstar, I don't remember exactly when it's set. I believe it's set between the 2. Flowers is set many years later. And Superstar, I think, is still about Yo, the main character from Shaman King.
Yep.
Flowers is about Yo's son.
Right. And I think that's still going.
Yes.
Okay.
It's fine. How about you? What have you been up to?
Okay, so not a whole lot this last week, just a couple things. So I finished a story called He Who Fights with Monsters, a LitRPG Adventure.
Okay.
Think about this as just like an ongoing story that someone's writing, kind of like a web novel. That's what it is. Okay. So the first, it's a silly number of chapters because the chapters aren't very long, but it's a collection of like the first book. And I think he's up to many books by now. Think about it as someone was transported to a fantasy-ish world and then has the powers of RPG.
Okay.
So that's what it is. It's about someone from Australia who's transported to a fantasy world, and because of that, their being has been given the ability of an RPG character. So they have stats, inventory, quests, all those things, and they try to survive in this new world. And it's interesting because it has some neat ideas about how the world works. It's a completely unknown new world. All this creator's doing. The creator's name goes by...
Shirtaloon?
Yeah, Shirtaloon. Yeah, so that's his pen name. It's an interesting idea because it's all about getting powers and upgrading those powers, and thus as you get more powerful, you go up in rank, and then by going up in rank, you get more powerful, and there's a whole quest guild, all kinds of things. And there's also a lot of politics involved. more so as the story goes on, because at the very beginning it's very much adventure, and then as it goes farther in, there's a lot more politics brought in. But there's actual gods that show up, powerful beings that are considered gods, and there's some things going on in the background you're not quite sure of, and it's just more of a watch this character as he explores this world.
Okay, sounds good.
So it wasn't written as a book, it's just like an ongoing series, and then this is the first collection to make the first book. It's good. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever read it, but there's another story called The Wandering Tavern.
You've mentioned this to me, but I haven't read it yet, but yes.
Yes, that same idea. It's just an ongoing story that's been slowly collected into books, and there's audiobooks and things like that. So that's the idea.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Cool.
I think they're up to 11 books, maybe.
All right.
I think it's still ongoing, I believe. So yeah, check it out. It's pretty good. Then I read Mushishi Volume 1, but we'll talk about that later. And the only other thing I've been doing is I've been playing more Master Detective Archives, Raincode Plus. I've done now the first official case and the second, because before we talked, I only did the prologue, which is more like a teaching case.
Yeah, tutorial type thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's good. The first case is about a serial killer. Second case is about a suicide. They're interesting cases, and it's like, oh, I didn't think that's how it was going to go. There's like twists and turns in it. The only problem I have with it that sets it differently from Danganronpa, because of the same creators, is that because it's set in a city, you don't get to know a lot of the characters as well as you do in Danganronpa, where you see every character constantly. Like, there's a very core group of characters that are like the main cast.
Yeah.
6 or 7. But then you do a case and you see new characters, but then when the case is over, they go away. Some of them are around,
Okay.
but they're like background characters now.
It's like a Phoenix Wright type thing.
Yeah, so it's a little different because in Danganronpa, you get to know everyone really well.
Yep.
But then all of a sudden, someone gets killed, and you have to figure out why.
Yeah.
This one is, you show up, someone's already dead, and you have to figure out what happened.
Okay.
But there's cool ways like, okay, how did this murder even happen? Because it's a locked room. Like, the first case is all about locked rooms, and how do you solve locked rooms? And the second one is about investigating a suicide that happened 6 months ago. And it's like, how do you do that? It's interesting. It's good. The characters are very interesting, but you don't see them enough besides the main character and the Shinigami. Most of the other ones are there.
Yeah.
Each case so far has focused on one other character. One other character goes along with you to solve the case. So it's like one character, and then the next case is a different character, and then the next case is another different character. So it seems like by the time you get through all the cases, you've gone through all the characters, so it's like, okay, now what? And next, is the story going to be over? It feels like it's more of like, we're going to set all this up for the next one. If we're just going to go through every one of these side characters' story, it's like, the game's not going to last forever. It's good. The cases are interesting. I have to see how it ends. I think there's 5-ish cases total. So there's the prologue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, and then a final epilogue-y kind of case.
Yeah.
And yeah. The good thing, though, is that it's all 3D, and if you forget something, there's a guide in the game to kind of see who the characters are. It goes through all the clues you've collected, all the stories you've seen, and then if you go back to the main menu, there is a gallery which shows you all of the clips of the scenes, so you can kind of remember everything. It's like, oh, wait, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Like, if there was a cool scene you wanted to check out again, you could do that. So there's a lot of... You can see whatever you want to see again, but it's like, okay. And the cases are cool. I just hope that there's a really, really good case at the end that kind of ties all the characters together. Because if every case is just one character that comes along, it's going to be like, okay, it gets kind of samey if I don't actually get to use 2 of these characters in the case. So I think I read online it's like 30 hours. So I'm like 2/3 of the way through time-wise. It'll be good.
Cool.
Check it out. I'll let you know when it's done.
If it really is the Danganronpa crew, which, I mean, some people have left and started other companies, but it is Spike Chunsoft, they do tend to make... The last case usually tends to be worth it. So I'm sure there'll be something interesting. And it's definitely one that I'm looking at. I'm like, I kind of want it.
Yeah, it's good. If you liked Danganronpa, if you liked Ace Attorney, Phoenix Wright, this one is good. It's very much this is a single mystery, solve it Danganronpa style, but then like it focuses on a very core, small cast, like Phoenix Wright. It's kind of a mix of both.
Okay.
But then there's also a much larger overarching story that kind of happens in between cases.
I see.
Yeah. So there's a huge story going on in the background that you kind of have flashes of between each case.
Okay.
And then the case itself is very much, this happened, what do we do?
Gotcha.
It's pretty cool. So for our next topic, we're going to do a quick discussion on the idea of how long does it take for you to decide to stick with a story or drop a story. So the idea for me for this was, okay, I pick up a book. Do I read it all the way through? Do I decide, do I read the next one? How far into a series or even a specific book do I go before like, yeah, I'll keep reading, or it's like, this isn't sticking with me. I'm done. It's gonna, not that it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It's just like, I either find it boring or it's not for me. What is the cutoff for you? That's what we're going to talk about now.
All right. No, it's an interesting thing to start off. I suppose my first question on this is your, I guess I would say this is your first cutoff point. So like if you've just started reading, how far are you willing to go not enjoying it before you say, I'm not enjoying this and I'm not going to get more?
Yeah.
So, because the thing that I first thought of was, as I was talking about earlier, Shaman King. I think if I had been buying the books individually, I might have gotten to like 17, 18, 19, 20, but I enjoyed it up to that point, but then it started to slog so much that I'm like, I think I might stop. And if it wasn't, I already had them purchased, downloaded, and put on my device I'm reading it on. I don't know if I would have kept reading. But I already had like the story enough to go and get it. I'm assuming this is not that. This is, you don't like it from the beginning. How far will you go until you start liking it?
So it's a few things. So as you were saying, you may not have continued purchasing it if you were doing it book by book. And I think that also comes down to each of these books comes out every 1 or 2 months. And in those 1 or 2 months, like, okay, I'm not as interested anymore. So do I really want to run out there and get the next one or not?
Yeah.
But for this, I was thinking to start with was, okay, you have your first book. And I will say this up front. There's only, so far, I've only read one story where it's like, I got halfway through the book. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to finish reading this. This isn't working
that's
for me.
pretty good.
Yeah. So there's only been, for the most part, I finished every book that I've read except for one, which is not that the book was bad, was that I just didn't enjoy it. So I was like, I'm getting kind of bored, so I kind of just gonna read something else.
Okay.
But the idea for me was, okay, I'll finish the first book, and if I liked it, I'll check out the next one. But if I don't, I'm really gonna leave it up to either someone else says this is good, I should stick with it, or I'll look for it on sale maybe. But even then, it's like, if the book isn't great, or if I don't know it's gonna be better, it's gonna be one of those, nah, first book didn't do it for me. And there's nothing that makes me think I should do no more. Because I've read a few where it's like, okay, I read the first one. It was stupid. Sometimes stupid could be funny. I was like, okay, no, this doesn't work for me. So I'm going to drop it. So for me, typically do one book, maybe 2 or 3, depending on if like the beginning's really good, but then it kind of peters out. Yeah, it's one of those. One book for me is usually my cutoff. It's like, okay, do I keep going or stick with the one?
Yeah. I think it for me, the way I think about it, where I'll decide if I want to read more. I think there's 2 ways I can get to the end of a book and think to myself, I want to read more. I want to read more, so I'm going to go and buy it today because and that's probably something where it's either been really fun or I got to the end and it finally got really compelling. It doesn't have to have been good up until that point. By the time I got to the end, I have to have either enjoyed it or they've put something in place where I really, really want to know what happens next. And it's like, I'm willing to take a chance because there's something compelling about what's going to happen. The stories I can think of for that is like Peddler in Another World, which we covered earlier. The ending of the first book being the fairly obvious, but, it turns out my spoilers, by the way, for the first book. It turns out my grandmother is the immortal witch, and because she's that, she's still alive. Whoa! A couple of other things that are hinted at near the end of the book. I enjoyed it. There was parts I didn't super like. Most of it I did like, but that ending, it's just like, okay, I kind of want to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I wasn't 100% sold on it, but it's like, all right, you got me. I want to know what happens next. And
Right.
I feel like that'll pull you through one more book, maybe two more books, but that's a really easy one.
Yeah, and we've mentioned stuff like that before where you get that hook. It's like,
Yeah.
what's the thing that's going to pull you in? And if the story can get that into you by the end of the first one, it's like, okay, great. I like this. It has me at least interested to see what happens next. It's like, okay, great. I will keep reading. I will keep checking it out. But as soon as that hook changes, it's like, okay, yeah, I've bought quite a few books and I don't know if I want to keep buying them. It's like, okay, I will reevaluate as time goes on, because there's definitely series that I've purchased. Like, okay, great, I have 6 or 7 of them. Next one's coming out in a month. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll check it out when it comes out. But I either forget or something else comes up. If I really liked it, I'll get it eventually. But it's also one of those things like, oh, well, this kind of doesn't do it for me. And then I've had one series where I got to the end. The ending was stupid. And I'm like, I am done with this series. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I got rid of all my books.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I think with the hook thing where it's just like, okay, maybe I didn't quite enjoy this, but I'm kind of curious about where it's going to go. I think that'll carry you like one or two more, but it has to then do something with it. It can't just be like, oh, we got to the end, and now there's something like, maybe something cool's going to happen next time. Like, if nothing cool happens next time, I'm done. You know what? I can think of a story that did this for me was Umineko no Nakokoro ni. The game. You've read the manga.
Yep.
But I played the original game. The first case, which is very long, I think it's like a 15, 20-hour visual novel. And it's not actually a visual novel. There's no choices. There's no anything. It's just basically a book with sound. It's very, very long. When I was reading it, I didn't even really enjoy it until about halfway through. But the first post-game, it's broken up into 8 games. Games, in quote. And it wasn't until the first post-game scene at the end of the first game that I got that hook where I was like, okay, here's the thing about this story that's going on that we haven't really talked about, and we're just going to hook you in with this. And then the second game didn't resolve all that, and it took a little bit to get going. But, okay, I'm going to give you this second chance. I'm going to go and I'm going to read the second one. And it paid off. It was like, okay, yeah, we've had to do a lot of this stuff. We've had to cover a lot of these things. It was kind of an interesting story, but hey, here's this cool thing that's going to happen. And then it didn't all happen, but there was something. And I think if it didn't have that, I would have dropped it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
You can have these hooks and you can get someone for like a book or two, but you have to pay that off no matter what.
Yep.
Whereas the other more obvious way is it's just when I decide if I'm going to get another book is, did I enjoy it? And if I enjoyed it enough that I'm like, yeah, I think I'll read another one. Or where there's no, I get to the end of a novel and it's like, I know this is a series. I know there's more. The end of the book didn't make me super want to get the next one, but I had a lot of fun. All right, I'll just get it. And then I'll start picking it up and reading it at some point. And that, I think, can carry you a lot farther than a hook, because that carried me through my Quiet Blacksmith life. So you want to live the slow life, and a couple others that I've bought, and I've read them all, and I'm looking back on them, and I'm kind of like, okay, I read those. I don't think I'm ever going to touch them again. But the first book was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good read. It went well. The characters were fun. The setup, the idea was fun. At the end of the book, there was nothing in it that made me desperately want to know what happened. But I enjoyed it. So I was like, all right, I'll just pick up the next one. I started reading that. Oh, I'm kind of enjoying this. And as long as I kind of enjoyed it, I would keep going. But then I got to the end of it, and it's just like, oh, okay, I got here. And I feel like that's the same. Again, I'm going to bring this up because that's what I read most recently, Shaman King, like the beginning was great. The characters I sort of enjoy, and I'll just keep going because it's like, well, I've mostly enjoyed it. I'm not super enthralled with what's going to happen next. I've enjoyed it so far. This might just be a slow part. 12 books later. Okay, please have something interesting happen.
Yeah, because that's one of those things like, okay, you got me the hook in the beginning, but then the hook slowly went away and we're just kind of going through the motions. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
is this going to change or is this just going to be how it is for the rest of it?
Yeah. To me, the two ways that I see a book that makes me want to read more, it's like there's either it wasn't super good, but there's something in here that seems potential and I want to read it. And if that doesn't get paid off soon, I'll just drop it on like book 2 or 3. But if I read the first book and I don't really care what happens, but I had fun, I just might buy the whole series all at once and then just read one more book and then just decide to stop. But that will carry me a lot farther if it's been fun.
Because I'm looking at Elden Ring. It's like, it's a stupid story.
Oh, it's so
but
dumb. It's
so funny.
Yes. I think, though, have you bought all of that?
No.
Neither have I. And it was so funny. And yet, again, to pull back to it, My Quiet Blacksmithing Life, like, it was fine. But I bought books 2 through 8 and read them all over the course of 3 days after finally reading the first one. Because I bought it, didn't read it for a couple weeks, read it, bought the entire rest of the series that was out, and read it in 2 days. But
I would do it.
None of it was as funny as Elden Ring. None of it was... It didn't have that high of Elden Ring. It didn't have that high of some of the other series that I've read. But I still got it and read all of it. And that feels weird to me that I do that. So
I think the other thing is with Elden Ring, you know what the story is. You know the story of Elden Ring. So it's just a retelling of a story I already know. So it's like, there's not going to be a crazy surprise coming around. It's just the goofiest way that they're telling the story possible.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking of another series that I read called Killer Shark in Another World.
Oh, yes.
It's if you took isekai and made it a B-level monster movie. It's not even isekai. Well, I guess it kind of is since the shark is isekai. But it's one of those, this is so weird and silly, and it's like you're watching one of those B monster movies, but it's like, okay, it's funny, but I don't know if I'm going to keep reading it.
Yeah. But I feel like this is kind of the opposite of your question, and it is a good question of like, okay, well, what makes you decide to stick with or drop something? I feel like the more interesting answer is what makes you drop it. Because to me, that usually means I've purchased this because I don't borrow books. I'm going to get into some of the more comic subscription things because to save some money, but I like buying the books and having them, whether digital or physical. That to me just feels more normal. Rather than like borrowing them or subscriptions for things. To me, it's also like, if I like this, even if I don't end up reading it, I want to buy it and be like, yay, I'm supporting the artist, blah, blah, blah. That's sort of where my mind comes from.
Yeah.
So to me, dropping a series is, I have purchased this. I have this. I will have this forever. But I don't want to keep reading. That, to me, it comes down to... why do I choose to stop reading something when I already have it? Because usually I already have it. Because if I've just read the first book and I wasn't excited enough to buy the next one, but I liked it, I'll just get to it eventually, maybe, or I'll forget about it. And it's not really feels like I've dropped it. It's just I've gotten distracted.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's a better way to say it. It's like, okay, I purchased it, I read it. It's like, it's interesting. But then it's one of those... okay, but I like this one better and this one better, so it just kind of gets pushed farther and farther to the back of the line, and then it just kind of eventually just falls off. It's like, okay, yeah, that was a thing. It didn't really hook me, but yeah, I have plenty of series like, okay, you got the first couple. It's like, okay, this is interesting, and it's either the next one hasn't come out yet, or I go to the store and they don't have it.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, I will check another time, and then I check again, it's not there. Or it's like, okay, I found something else to read, or this looked interesting, and just slowly goes away. It's like, okay, I'm looking at myself. It's like, oh yeah, I have a bunch of series I only have like the first 3 of. They're good. I should read the rest of them, but I have a new thing I'm reading.
Yeah, that's usually what it is for me.
Yeah.
When you say drop a series, it also like 'Cause I can think of only like one series. Okay, no, I can think of two series that I've been reading in the last year where I've specifically decided to stop, even though I know I have more. And it's Chainsaw Man and a light novel series called Loner Life in Another World.
Okay. Yep.
Let's talk about Chainsaw Man first, because I feel like I can explain that one. Just because, like, I can explain why I stopped reading it more easily. And it's... So I'm not a horror person.
True.
Which Chainsaw Man isn't, but I don't like horror movies. And Chainsaw Man does draw some of it. It's more of the action violence than horror, but just like, ooh, gross, bloody, violent death is starting to creep towards that horror, body horror type thing. And that's kind of just like, eh.
Yeah, the Chainsaw Man can be pretty visceral at sometimes.
Yeah.
So if that's not really your thing, it's like, okay, I don't know if I really enjoy this.
But it's not that, because one of my favorite series, has some war scenes and like people get bombed and you see their body parts, you see their internal organs physically drawn out carefully, splattered all across everything.
Yeah, but that's not the point of that series, though.
The other one I'm talking about, it kind of is part of it. How horrifying war and violence can be is kind of part of that series. But I don't think that helped it.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that to me is, what's his name? Deku? Is that his name? No.
Oh, the main character of Chainsaw Man?
Yeah.
Denji.
Like, he's interesting conceptually, but I just don't enjoy watching him do anything. And I don't know why. Because it's like, oh, he's this very innocent person who will accept people at their word and will get put into these bad situations because of it. Like, I can see a character like that being really interesting, but when I actually watch him in Chainsaw Man, I just don't care. I just don't enjoy seeing what he does.
Yeah, so it's just you don't connect with the main character. So it makes it even harder to get that hook in you that we keep bringing up.
Yeah. And then what causes me to drop is it's not even specific things, but just I'll read a scene and I just like, if I have to put whatever I'm reading with down and be like, I don't want to read this right now. It could be violence. And it's not like, it doesn't have to be any particular thing. It could be like, this is a really dumb joke and I hate it. That's happened with Chainsaw Man. It's like, oh, here's a scene and it's a really dumb joke. And I'm just like, I'm just putting this down for a minute. I think if that happens more than twice in a row or like within a section of a book,
it's not going to jive.
At that point, I just walk away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Chainsaw Man, it was like the first book, I was like, okay, it was twice. And then I started the second book and it was like 5 times. I'm like, I can't even make myself come back to this. And that was the same sort of thing with Loner Life in Another World. It's just easier to say because it's a first person narrative where the person talking it's so strong in this like person's head. And then on top of that, he doesn't remember anyone's names. So everyone has these just random names that are just words like Jock 1, Jock 2, Jock 3 for this entire book.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, they'll swap to someone else's perspective and then everyone has a name. But it's that kind of thing. It was for a whole book and it's just like, I finished it. And I had already bought like the first 7 and I'm like, I don't want to open the second book and find out it continues to be like this. Because to me, it's just not funny. It's just not interesting. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I can see other people seeing it and being like, okay, they can run with it. But it's one of those pet peeves of mine that I just can't deal with it. It drives me up the wall. I feel like that's another thing of just something hits you that's very you and you're just done. Doesn't matter how good anyone else says anything about it.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen often, but it's one of those, when it does, it's like, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, not reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only had a couple where I've, not too many manga, but like books, I've like, nah, I've read a number of these, and it's like, this story's not doing anything for me. I'm out. And I just never read any of the new ones.
Yeah.
And then I had one, I think there was 5 books total.
Yeah.
I got to the end of the 4th one. It's called, I think, the Nicholas Flamel series. Got to the end of the 4th one. I'm like, I know what's going to happen in the next one. And I was right. And that's like, why? I figured out the solution before it happened. And it's like, all right, I'm done. This story's, I don't need to read this again. It's like, it's too predictable. And it's like, okay.
Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I can't remember if it's 5 or 6.
It's 6.
So I read through the 5th one. And I'm like, I know what the secret is. And then the 6th book came out, and I was right. And I was like, why did I read this?
Yeah. I think if there's something where it's like a plot point and you figure it out, but you don't feel like it was fun figuring it out, that would break any story.
Yeah. So I still read it, but it's like, I'm not reading this again. It's like, okay. But then there's plenty of books that just, I want to read it, I want to get back to it, and there's just not enough time. There's only so much time to read all these stories, and there's so many. I
don't know if that's for everybody, but like, I feel like for both of us, it's a lot of times where we don't drop a lot of series. We just get distracted by other things, and like, I don't have time for this. I want to read this other one. I'm going to get to this someday when I have time, but I don't have time because I need to go and read these other 63 books that I also really like.
And at least it's much easier now than it used to be with all the digital stuff, because before it's like, okay, if the bookstore doesn't have it, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
That happened a lot. That's why I have a lot of series that aren't finished. It's like, okay, I have books 1 through 9 of Tsubasa, and then I couldn't find book 10. It's like, okay, I know where the story goes because I've read it other places, but it's like, okay, I wanted to read the rest of it in a book, and the stores never had it. So it's not that I dropped it per se. It's not complete on my shelf. I haven't gone to go find the rest of them. You drop it for all kinds of reasons. Either you didn't like it, which is fairly rare for me. I try to at least screen them ahead of time. I don't typically buy ones like, this really isn't going to be good, but I'm going to read it anyways. Usually with the shark one, it's like, I'm pretty sure this is going to be stupid. And it was. Yeah. But at least I knew going in, it's like, okay, this is going to be like watching a B-horror movie, and it was. And it's like, okay, this is kind of fun for what it is.
Yeah. I get that feeling too. I feel like in the same way, like I don't feel like there's a lot of series that I've ever really dropped. When it comes to novels, I generally do okay with it when I can go to a bookstore or something, because completely random factoid, but this is something that I learned when I was around in college. I was reading Stephen King's On Writing, and he talks about how he decides if he wants to like get a book to read. This is basically a similar strategy to that. And this to me has always worked, where it's you pick up a book and like you look at the back and go, okay, this sounds interesting. And you flip open to some completely random section just in the middle of the book and just read a page. And you will have no idea what's going on. You won't know who any of the characters are. You won't know anything about it. But if you read that page and you enjoy it, you can get it. If you read it and you didn't enjoy it, even if the story sounds amazing, just put it down. You're not going to like it. Because you're not getting any of, okay, I like this character. Oh, I like this plot point. Oh, I like this thing. Oh, I'm interested to find out what happened. It's just you're looking at the writing and the storytelling and how it's been done. You don't have to just do it once. Like you can read it once, read a page, and if you're kind of like, I don't know, okay, flip to another random section. Just read a couple paragraphs. Flip to a third. But you'll get a sense of, do I like the way this person writes? Do I enjoy how they're telling things? Does it make sense to me? Does anything jump out at me? Anytime that I've done that and I've bought the book and I've then actually read it, yeah, no, this was good. And there's been books where it's like it can very quickly be like, yeah, you know what? No, I don't want this, because you'll just be reading it. And it's, I don't like the way this person writes.
That's true.
The idea of the story is cool. The characters are nice, but I start reading, I'm like, ooh, no. I think if I had been able to do that with Loner Life, I would have been like, oh, this is how it's, oh, no, just put this down. Nope. But I bought 7 books all at once without reading any of them because it was on sale and it looked really good. And the idea was really cool. And the beginning, that's the other thing is, the beginning you'll get the free samples of, But you don't want the beginning because the beginning is the start, and there's usually a lot of extra work put into that to get people to start going. You want something in the middle. You don't want something right at the start because that's meant to onboard you. You want something in the middle where there's both less polish because there's so much else to cover, but also more of this is how the story is going to be. The beginning is how it starts, and they'll do more to help people get going. But once it gets going, this is how the writer's going to have the story go.
Yep.
Do you like this part?
That's a good idea. I don't think I ever thought of doing it that way.
It's hard to do that with digital books.
Well, digitally, yeah. They don't really want you flipping through the book randomly.
Amazon used to. I don't know if they still do it, but they sometimes when you read their digital samples, they'll have a button called Surprise Me, and that will just grab a random section in the middle of the story. I don't know if they still do it. I don't know how often it works, and it's usually a specific random section.
Gotcha. Okay.
Not like, oh, they specifically chose this, but Amazon picked these 2 pages, and every time you hit Surprise Me, it's those 2 pages.
Ah, okay.
That's something I know they used to do.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. But even for manga, it's one of those, while the writing style can be different, it's like, do you like the art style? It's like, I don't know if there's too many that the art style has completely put me off. There's definitely art styles I like more than others.
Yeah.
But if it's one of those, if the art style doesn't jive with you, there's no point in reading it then, because you're just not going to enjoy it, because you'll get so much of the story from the art. And at least with the art, you can kind of tell from the cover. It's like you can just pick it up. Nope, not for me. You know what you're in for on the cover.
Yeah, you can get a good sense from that.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think the art has ever made me put something down, but it has made me keep going.
Yep.
If it's going to do something, it's either going to do nothing or it's going to make me want to keep reading.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I enjoy this art even if I don't care for what else is happening. Whereas if the art I didn't like, I wouldn't have even gotten past like page 2. I would have immediately realized, like, I don't like this art. I'm done.
Yeah. But then there's the old adage of don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. Just flipping open a manga and just like glancing at the art and seeing what you think. You could do that definitely with that. I don't know.
But then there's
one thing Oh, go ahead.
If it's a long running series, it's definitely one of those, the art can improve as it goes along. But I think there is a barrier of entry for manga where you have to be a decent artist to even get published.
Yep.
Like there's some like gag mangas, they have their own style and things like that. But those are meant to be funny, so they're trying to convey something that's funny. So that you don't need a true realistic style or things like that, if depending on what you're doing. But if you want to be just a regular like adventure manga or shonen manga or things like that, there's a level of ability that you need to already have mastered before they're even going to let you publish.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I definitely agree with that. And I think, especially with a lot of manga, like the art is usually better than most other comics and things. I think there's only been a couple of series where I've looked at the art and not thought it was at least technically good. Where like I looked at it and I'm like, I don't like this art. And it's only been in light novels. And it's usually the light novels that I really like. And even then, the ones where it's like, I don't really like this art, it's still like, but I get what they're trying to do, and it's okay. It's not great. It's not awful.
Yeah, I can see that. It doesn't add anything to the story.
Yeah.
Summarize, there's not a lot of reasons to drop a story for me. The big ones are, it just comes down to personal preference for the most part. It's like, there's stories that's just like, nope, this doesn't click for me, and then I dropped it. Or it's just, there's so many others that just gets left behind. That I don't mean to drop it. That just gets pushed to the side if it doesn't come out enough, or something new and shiny comes along.
In summary, we never drop anything. We read everything and we love it all because that's the kind of people. No, I think in summary for us, like we're not the kind of people who stop reading things because we don't like it. We're also, you and I think both are, we like so many things that there's very few things that we just don't like. And we know what we really don't like. Like I don't read horror.
Right.
So, like, I don't get annoyed because it's a horror series, because I just don't read them.
Except for a Halloween special.
I have one that is a horror manga that we can talk about for Halloween. That is one of my favorite manga I've ever read, and it's like the only horror manga I've ever read.
Okay then.
Yes, so we can do that. Yes. But I don't think either of us have that many instances where we've dropped a series where we have it and we made a conscious decision. I don't want to keep reading this.
Mm-hmm.
I think for both of us, a lot of the time is the worst we'll get is I kind of want to take a break from this and I'll come back later.
Yeah.
Usually at the end of a book, but even sometimes in the middle of a book. But it's mostly like I am not enthused to grab more. But if someone just said, oh, hey, here's the next one for free right now in your hands, I'm giving it to you. We rarely have series where we'll say no. We'll just be like, okay, sure, add it to the pile.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's both of the way that we both are. Of it's not that we don't drop series. Other people do, and if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we're usually like, I'll come back to this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
let that be a lesson to you.
If you have a reason that you drop a series, let us know.
Because we don't know.
We do it so rarely that we don't know. We don't know if there's a criteria. It's just personal preference for me. It's like, okay, this doesn't work for me. I may or may not ever read this again.
I do think it's, even though we made the show and we both agreed, and I think it's something we're going to keep doing of, we don't want to talk about series that we don't like. We want to talk about the series we do like because A, there's so much out there, and B, we kind of want this to be a positive show.
Mm-hmm.
There's value in also understanding what you don't like.
Yes.
And either avoiding it, like what I tend to do, and I'm assuming you tend to do, and B, being okay with not liking something. There have been books, I've talked about it, it's like, okay, I tried it, didn't like it, completely bounced off. Okay, and I move on.
You don't have to force yourself to like something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many other choices.
Unless you're doing it for a show, and so you buy the next 5 books of Chainsaw Man, and you don't even make it through the first half of book 2.
God.
You
could have borrowed them.
No, I'm... Here's the thing. As much as I don't want to read it, I feel like at some point I will sit down and try again and keep trying to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that glimmer of something where it's like, okay, I feel like I'm going to get past a point and I'm going to like it. Especially now that I've read Goodbye Eri and I know that I like the way that he can compose stories. I just don't like this one.
Yeah.
And it's gotta build up I've got to forget how much I didn't like it where I stopped reading and then be like, okay, then I'll get back and be like, oh yeah, I was reading this part and I don't like it, but I've forgotten what's happening. So I can just flip through the scene, not really paying attention because I don't even know what's going on. And then the next scene will start and I'll start reading again.
Yeah. The beginning can be a little rough in that there's a lot that has to be done to make Denji kind of a likable character.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's when the story really picks up of what's going on that it's more interesting.
Okay.
But yeah.
Someday I'll get there.
The beginning is a little rough. Don't feel like you have to rush. It's still going.
Oh, don't worry. I won't.
Yeah.
I don't feel like rushing at all. As you were saying, if you guys have dropped series, if you all have reasons why you've like stopped reading something, stopped following along with something, like what was the cause? What did it? Because we have expertly explained how we have no idea, other than the fact that we just stop reading and forget about the series by accident.
That happens a
lot. Or it doesn't show up in the bookstore.
I was reading that?
Oh yeah, I have that still.
That happens a lot.
I mean, final off tangent, but like I don't know about you, but one thing I know that I do is it's like, oh, there's a sale. Let me buy every single first volume that's on sale for $1 or $2 and just buy them all up. And then I have like 50 books list in my library and I'm like, I don't know what this is anymore, but I got it. I remember looking at it and being like, this sounds cool.
Yeah, that doesn't help either.
Yeah. But again, that's like, I didn't really drop it. I didn't, because I never started.
True.
But I have it. I think that's my issue that I have to deal with more than like disliking something. 'Cause even...
So you're a digital hoarder then?
Yes, digital. Definitely digital, not physical. Yep. Let me
Yep.
just
Pure
put this
digital.
cloth over my things in my room right now. Don't look underneath it.
Don't look behind the curtain.
It's fine. Even if there was a curtain, there'd be so much in front of it. It wouldn't matter. You don't have to look behind it. You can still tell.
Yeah. So drop a series, don't drop a series. Go nuts.
But enjoy it.
Yes.
And if you don't, stop. Until you forget about it and then start again and then stop again.
Wise words.
So our main topic for this week, we're going to be looking at the first 2 volumes of Mushishi. This is a... Wait a minute. Let me start that over.
Okay.
So for our main topic today, we're going to be discussing the first 2 volumes of Mushishi by Yuki Udushibara. It started publishing in the year 2000 in Kodansha's Afternoon, and it has been released in its entirety in English as of recently, although I believe it is only digital. Several of the books were released in a physical form, but I believe the last 3 were only released digitally as an omnibus. But all 10 volumes are available in English if you are interested in it, which you should be, because it's really good. This is a seinen series. I've been, quote-unquote, reading it for a long time. I don't know if I got it right when it first came out, but I believe by the time book 2 or 3 had come out, I had started getting it in English, and I don't think I got past book 4 originally, but again, that was around a time when I was high school, college age. Money was kind of tight, and Mushishi is a little bit on the more expensive side, at least in English, so I ended up stopping getting it for a while, but it is one of those series that sticks with you for a long time, or at least it stuck with me. There is an anime for it. That has also been released in English and around the world if you are interested in it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but I think the important thing to know about Mushishi that will decide how much you're going to like it is a series of short stories.
Yes.
There's very little connection between each story other than the main character of Ginko, this white-haired, one-eyed, smoking medicine peddler who's traveling around pre-modern Japan, maybe?
Yeah. Around there. Around that time.
The date's not clear. There's some weird anachronisms, like him having a needle and syringe in one series, but everyone's sort of acting like it's the 1600s. But it's also set in a lot of very rural parts of the country.
Yeah.
So it could be it's more recent, but far enough back in the past that those parts of Japan haven't modernized at all. But it's kind of not the point.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get. So if you're looking at the volume 1 cover, that's the main character.
Yes. You'll also sometimes see him with his giant wooden case.
Yep.
There's a lot of very traditional Japanese things in this series. So if you're also interested in that, this is a big part of it. There's a lot of folklore. There's a lot of traditional designs, clothing, storytelling involved. But instead of spirits or ghosts, everything is caused by the mushi, which, as is described in one of the earlier chapters, is basically the most primitive form of life that still exists. But despite being primitive, they can also have very unique traits about them. They almost work like spirits or ghosts and other things, but they're instead a kind of life form.
But they could do certain things too. They're not just a spirit or a ghost. They can be used to do things.
Yeah, and I think like more Japanese spirits, instead of them being like, oh, it's a spirit. Well, a spirit can do this, 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 or this. And depending on this one, it'll choose which one it wants to be. These are more like, it is mushi. It is this kind of mushi. It can do this one thing, and it does that. And so this is just what it does. Whereas I think a lot more of like Western, like ghosts and vampires and things, like a vampire can do dozens of different things. It's like, no, this is this mushi. It lives like this. This is the existence it has. This is the thing it does. And you're simply watching a story about dealing with that. And that's all it will ever be. I do want to say one other thing before we talk about some of the stories, because as it is made of a bunch of short stories, unlike normal where we'll sort of talk through the whole plot and cover it, it's a bunch of individual plots. So we're just going to pick out a couple of the ones that we like or the ones that we think are interesting and discuss them. But the art in this, if you like forests and natural landscapes and things like that, is extremely good.
Yes.
Greenery done to the extreme, since a lot of it takes place in forests and woods and more rural areas. When you can see some of the colored pictures, there's almost a watercolor feel to it. I think in some parts it is done with a little bit of watercolors, but it's just absolutely gorgeous art.
Yeah, the art is really good. You've read more than I have, so is it always one-off stories?
I've definitely haven't read past the first half of the series, but as far as I know, no, it stays as always these one-off stories. There are a few that connect to other things. Like there's a story in book 3 about Ginko's past where you see how he became a Mushishi, which I guess we should also say the mushi are the strange and weird life forms, and a Mushishi is a person who studies, deals with, or works with mushi, almost like a doctor or a researcher. And this is in Japanese language, this is a common term for someone who studies a thing, is a something something shi. That's what Ginko is, and he basically is wandering around exploring, learning about them. For his reasoning being, he draws mushi towards him so he can't stay in the same place. But it's mostly comes down to it gives him a reason to go and explore and see these weird things that happen. Now that I think about it, I think we're going to do this opposite of how we normally do it.
Okay.
I want to talk about what these stories are like, and then we'll talk about the stories themselves.
Sure.
And when I was trying to think of how I'd explain Mushishi to someone, it is optimistic tragedy is where I got to, in that these are all stories where things go wrong, something happens. It's usually bad, and people will die from these. I mean, not always.
Not always,
Sometimes people will die.
Yep.
These things that happen can't always be fixed. You can't get back to how things were before, but you can heal from them. People can move on. And Ginko himself is going to try to help people and try to... He always looks at the mushi as a sort of a natural phenomenon that you just can't change. It will exist. It will be what it is. Whether it's like a rainstorm or a tidal wave or a rainbow, it will just be itself.
Yep.
The way he sees what his job is to help people fit around these things that are primitive, can't be reasoned with, can't be worked with, but exist, and trying to keep them from being harmed by them as much as possible and understanding them as much as possible. Things are always going wrong and nothing ever comes for free, but ultimately, most of the time, it will be okay. And that's sort of how I got to the sense of an optimistic tragedy. Something is always going wrong, but when you get to the end, there's something about it that is positive. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think that's the same feeling I have. It's more of he shows up and tries to solve an issue the town or someone's having. I'm trying to think of another story that's like that, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But it is one of those, every story that I've read is very unique.
Yep.
It's not just the rehashing of I show up in the town, solve the bad issue, and we go off on our ways and you pay me and then off I go. It's very much the setup changes each time. The solution is different every time. And even the results are different every time. Sometimes everyone is happy at the end. Sometimes is like, okay, I'm happy, but also sad just because of what this means for the future. And then sometimes just things don't work out. But he's still trying to solve the problem, but there's only so much he can do.
Yeah. And that's, I think, another thing that gives that sort of like dramatic tragedy of he can't just solve everything. Ginko is smart. Ginko knows a lot. Ginko has a lot of tools and things that he can use, but he can't fix everything. And a
Right.
lot of the stories that will happen, one of the ones that we're not going to talk about that much, but the last one in the first book about the traveling bog, he's trying to save someone who's closely tied to this mushi, and he can't do it himself. He tries to get a bunch of fishermen to see if they can maybe rescue this girl who's trapped in it with a bunch of fishing boats. And they do succeed in that story. He couldn't do anything himself at that point. He was just like, let's just try this. Maybe we'll get lucky. And they got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all the entire sense you get from it. There's other ones where they try something and you hope that you get lucky and you don't. The first one in the second book, another one we're not going to spend too long on, The Mountain Sleeps. There's a person in the mountain who sort of like helps a local village, and you ultimately find out that he did something that got rid of the mountain spirit, and the only way he can protect the mountain going forward, because the mountain spirit is gone, is literally sacrifice himself to another mountain spirit. And the mushi that will come with to keep the mushi that have been coming and causing all these problems, to keep them away. And Ginko's like trying to get to him, and no, doesn't even get close. Guy gets consumed by it. He's gone. Ginko doesn't even get halfway to him, and it's already long since over. And it's just, he figured it out. He tried, but it didn't matter. For most people, again, the optimistic part, the person who was about, yeah, they're gone. But he did it for a reason. The town was protected, and that saved it, but it's bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these stories will have those two competing themes constantly running through them, of trying to make right and do the best we can to take care of the people. And these things exist, and if you get in their way, they will cause you problems, and they feel nothing because they're anything from the size of an amoeba to a giant swamp bigger than a whale. And they just are, and they don't notice you. I think, to give a better example, we're going to do these not in order, but I think the one that we need to talk about the most is the fourth one from the first book.
Yeah.
Light in the Eyelids. To me, this is the quintessential Mushishi story. The anime for this is also, I think it's one of the early episodes. It's the fourth story of the entire series. For the anime, I think they do every story as an episode.
Okay. I haven't seen the anime.
Because these are like short stories, they just make an episode out of each story, which means they're also very long, slow, drawn out. It gives it a very relaxed vibe, even though some of these aren't very relaxed. They take this already kind of more plotting series that doesn't constantly try to push the drama forward, and just sort of things happen, and they draw it out into these very, very long things that work well. It's almost slice of life type calm,
Mm-hmm.
because they're taking a 40-page, 50-page comic and making it into a 24-minute episode. But The Light in the Eyes is a very, very famous one because it's from the first book. It's a very popular episode. There exists a girl named Sui who lives in almost like an underground storage shed attached to her cousin Biki's house.
Mm-hmm.
Biki's family they're not like uber wealthy, but like they have a fairly large house. And Sui lives in that because she can't go out in the light. She ends up showing Biki a little bit about it, where what ultimately we find out caused it, which is closing your second eyelids. So she tells him to close his eyelids, and it's dark, but you can still see some light getting through. Because your eyelids don't block light. Turn most of it off. But you have a second set of eyelids that you can close, and that brings you into true darkness. But in that true darkness, you can still find some light, because the river of light, which will come up a lot in this series as well. This is one of the few things that comes back, but there's a thing called the river of light, which is this giant flowing life force of mushi that exists outside of reality. People can see it if they do something like closing their quote-unquote second eyelid.
Mm-hmm.
But because Sui has been watching this, ultimately find out she's gotten infected with mushi in her eyes, that make it, if she goes out in actual sunlight, it's incredibly painful. And so she's been living in this shed in the dark because it's underground. She can live down there and be safe. And her cousin Beaky has been helping take care of her because they don't know why she can't see. They don't know about the mushi in her eyes yet. They're afraid that she's just sick. And Beaky's mother is like, you got to be careful. We don't want you to catch it. And he's like, I'm being very careful. I'm cleaning my clothes and getting rid of things so that I don't catch it. And then, of course, he gets it. It starts off like there's a candle in his room at night, and he just blows it out, throws it away because it hurts. The next morning, when the sun comes out, he's in his room, like curled up in pain, under his blanket, under his pillow, trying to get all the light away because it hurts constantly. His mother then goes to tell Sui this because she just realized that Sui's doing that because they are taking care of her. So he brings her breakfast and just tells her that Beaky got what you have.
Yeah.
I don't hate you for it because you're suffering from this too, but Beaky can't come anymore because her mother made him do this and now he's sick too. And that will become important for the tragedy part. But mother comes back. Ginko, who heard about Sui and was coming to find him, is there, found her son, and is taking care of him because it is, of course, Mushi in his eyes that's causing this to happen. And the bright light is doing that. Because it was so recent that it happened, Beaky's already cured, basically, or will be treated within the next day or two. But Sui, freaking out that her cousin, the only person she's been able to talk to for years, has lost his sight because of her, does something where she opens her second eyelid and then basically walks into the river of light. And there's a fantastic scene of just her there with just black smoke pouring out of her eyes in this like glowing river.
Yeah.
Because she's just destroyed her eyes from this. Ginko goes, finds out about this, and is like, no, you should not have done that. But okay, I think I can at least get rid of what's causing the pain. Because one other thing is, Ginko knows about her because he can also do this with closing his second eyelid, seeing the River of Light. Again, the River of Light comes up in a few other stories, so Ginko having a connection to it will make sense. But hiding her, that's not important. Now we get to the actual action point of this, which again is another thing about the series of just there's a little bit of everything in there, but this episode is like everything that's going to happen in Mushishi is somewhere in here.
Yeah.
The weird life forms, the things that it happens, family, tragedy, optimism, saving everybody. So they go out in the moonlight and Ginko tells Sui to close both her eyes and her second eyes and then open her regular eyes because the mushi will be drawn to moonlight. And then slime just starts spraying out of her eyes. And this is something the anime does very well, is it does this scene so well. The manga does a great job of showing it and showing this as a thing happening, but it's just getting sprayed with slime and stuff. Ginko reaches out and grabs this thing that was like floating around her eyes, and it's this earwig worm centipede thing that like wraps around his arm. And this is what was in her eyes, kills it, and then uses it to make a medicine, pulls out one of his own eyes, because it's a glass eye.
Yeah.
Ginko is actually a one-eyed man.
Not an actual eye.
You don't find that out until after he pulls it out. And this is a great scene of Beaky who's watching. Is just like, oh my God, what did you, why are you taking your eye out? It's like, it's a glass eye, you moron. It's fine. So he makes a medicine out of that worm and injects it into the eyeball and puts that into one of Sui's eye sockets because her eyes are gone.
Yeah. They're just black holes.
The end of it is, by the next day, Sui is able to come out and be out in the sun again and can see with that one eye. And Ginko goes off and starts smoking again because he's a cool, mysterious dude who likes to smoke. And that's the story. That's the whole thing. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. And it's so good. Mm-hmm. I haven't said this since this whole thing's gone. This series is so good. It's so good. The anime does a great job of expanding everything, but the manga does a great job of just having this condensed 40, 50 page story where you go through the whole gamut of Here's the problem. Here's what's going on. Here's the crazy thing that's happening from it. Here's something about the human condition. Here's Ginko trying to solve it. Here's a conclusion. And it does it over and over and over and over again. Every time. Something new, something interesting. And this is one where it's something terrible has happened. And yeah, Ginko figures out a way to show up. And there's some reasons for why he figured it out that are kind of just don't think about it too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it tells this whole story of these people, and you get from beginning to end with it, and it's just so good.
Yeah, that is a good one.
What are your, to me, of all of the stories from Mushishi I've read, this is probably number 3 for my top.
Well, I've only read the first volume, so I don't have that many to choose from.
Right. So of the first volume, where would you place this one?
This one's up there. I kind of liked the first one just because it was so there's 5. There's the Green Gathering, Soft Horns, the Pillow Path, Light in the Eyes, and the Traveling Bug, or in the first volume.
Yes.
Light in the Eyes is probably near the top.
Mm-hmm.
I like the first one, Green Gathering, just because that's the first one and kind of is a lot more mysterious.
Yeah, I think the Green Gathering is another very good one.
Mm-hmm.
It is that first story, and it sort of introduces everything, and it explains a lot of random things. But I think Light in the Eyes is more of, okay, here's Ginko as a medicine man trying to help things, and Light in the Eyes is, here's Ginko as someone exploring and trying to understand Mushi and seeing the absolute insanity of what Mushi can be and cause, without being terrifying or dark.
Yeah, so the Light in the Eyes one very much felt like it was the least Mushi of all of them. Because
I guess I could see that.
Because except for when it comes out of her eyes, the Mushis aren't really as much of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like she's sick. We're not sure what's wrong with her. He comes in, tries to help the boy, but then also helps her. And it's kind of more of him just going around and helping people. He just happens to be there somehow, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. For the first one, the Green Gathering, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so the Green Gathering is very much, he shows up in a mysterious forest, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just wandering around. And this one is very much more on the spirit side. It very much feels like the Mushi are spirits in this one.
Yes, I would say they sort of vacillate between animals, creatures, and spirits, and this is very much, it's just a retelling of a almost traditional Japanese spirit story, but as Mushi.
Yeah, and it has to do with almost like a haunting, I would say.
There's a young boy who lives in a house in the middle of nowhere who, if he draws anything with his left hand, it comes to life.
Yes.
His family doesn't want anyone to know about it, and his grandmother had been taking care of him, but his grandmother has passed away, and then he hurt his hand, so he hurt his right hand, so he can't use that anymore for now while his hand is healing. So he can only use the left hand, but he's like trying to write a letter, and the kanji come to life and start flying around the room.
And that's how Ginko finds him, because he just sees these random letters flying in the air.
I believe he's searching for the boy as well.
Okay, because he's heard rumors. I think that comes up a lot in the other stories as well. He's heard rumors, or someone was talking about this, so he's decided to swing by.
Yeah, I think he's trying to find him, and I think the flying kanji in the air is what lets him find the boy. But he wasn't just in the forest in the middle of nowhere and this just happened to happen. He was looking for them. And the kid's like, I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. But we're out in the middle of nowhere. You can stay the night.
Yeah.
It turns out there is this almost like a ghost girl in the house.
Yep.
Who Ginko finds, and she tries to get him to leave, and it turns out she's part Mushi.
Yeah.
Part human. And it's not just anyone, it's the boy's grandmother, but she's like a young teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Because when she was a child, she was involved in something pretty much like being spirited away.
Yes.
Where she was invited to a gathering of Mushi to become one, but it was interrupted. So she's only half Mushi. So half of her returns to being human, and the other half remains as a Mushi.
Because for a long time, his grandmother was still around.
Yes. She only died just recently.
Yeah. So it's a bit confusing that way. It's like, are you still the same person?
But this sort of spirit's been watching over him since then. Since before then and still now, even though the human form of the grandmother has already passed away. And ultimately, the boy uses his hand to draw the cup from the mushi party so that the spirit of the grandmother, who's half mushi, half human, can finish that ceremony.
Yep.
And then she sort of comes back to reality, no longer human, although she looks at still a mushi, but can now actually interact with him and see him and talk to him.
Right.
And then Ginko steals the cup.
Yes.
Do you find out what that's for? Oh, yeah, you do, because you find out in Traveling Bog. You do find out in the first book.
Yeah.
Ginkgo
Go
takes a lot of things.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of souvenirs.
But then it's also one of those things where you learn that he can actually manipulate mushis as well.
Yep.
Because you learn that because you always see him smoking, but then the smoking is actually not really smoking, sort of.
Yeah, it's he uses it a couple different ways, but it's like a mist that will trap or confound other mushi.
Like defense mechanism that he can use. Yeah. I'd like the first one because it really set the tone for how the story's going to go.
Yes. I think tonally you're right. That's probably the most, especially on the sort of spiritual side. And also, there are stakes in some of these.
Yes.
People die from some of the things that happen, and people are trying to be saved from dying for some of these things that happen. But sometimes it's just, there's a kid whose hand makes things come to life.
Yeah.
And we're going to spend time with him and see if we can fix it. And hey, we fixed it. Okay.
Yeah, this was a very low stakes story. But then the light in the eyes one, it's like, okay, this kid is sick. We can solve this mostly with not mushi.
True.
Yeah.
And I think that's where remembering that Mushishi is kind of like doctor or researcher, it fits when you remember that that's part of it. Ginko isn't just a wanderer.
Right.
He isn't just curious about them. He is a kind of person in this world whose job it is to deal with or help people with these things that exist.
Yep. Did you want to talk about that one from book 2?
Yeah, let's talk about the Sea of Brushstrokes. So book 2, I think the other thing about this is there are a few chapters in this series where you want to read them in order. But other than that, it doesn't matter what you read. If you read book 4 before book 2, you're not going to get much of a change. There's a chapter in book 3 about Ginko's past. You shouldn't read that chapter first. But pretty much anything else, you could read them and it would be like, yeah, that's fine. You want to read that one next? Okay, go read that one. That's an interesting thing about it. So we're going to jump over to the second story in book 2, which is, I know you haven't read this one yet.
Yeah.
This one is more about the Mushishi, where it follows Ginko as he goes to this library that exists. What ends up happening is a lot of the story is actually talking about the past of this girl who lives there.
Okay.
Her family in the distant past was dealing with this incredibly dangerous mushi that they couldn't fight, they couldn't kill, they couldn't do anything. So instead, they sealed it in the womb of one of the daughters of this family. And then her next child that was born the color of ink because the mushi was trapped inside them.
Okay.
And what they had to do was they had to write stories about how to destroy mushi. And in writing it, part of that mushi would slowly be pulled out of them through that brush and put into the text that they were writing. And this was years and years ago, and that family has slowly been working on it. And the story follows the current person of it, this woman in her late teens, early 20s. It's not given at all, but like an adult woman who all that's left is one of her legs is completely ink, and the rest of her looks normal. But it has to be a story about destroying or killing or eradicating mushi. And so she would spend her days, Mushishi would come, they would tell her the things of how they destroyed mushi or how they got rid of things, and she would write those stories out. And because, of course, this is a tragedy, it causes immense pain because this thing that's trapped inside of her is still fighting to survive, and it's slowly being peeled apart and turned into ink. Until one day, Ginko shows up. And Ginko is this kind of person who tries to help people live with things or adapt around them.
Yeah.
Emotionally, that helps her because just listening to people kill them and then dealing with this horrible pain is not necessarily the most mentally stabilizing thing to deal with.
No.
A lot of Ginko stories she can't even use because they're not about that. They're about living with and adapting in around them.
Yeah.
But they have a good relationship. Ginko goes back every once in a while. But also, because that's how they have to deal with this, they have this massive underground library just packed with scrolls and books on how people have dealt with mushi, what they've seen, the things that are out there, how they've countered them, and the symptoms they cause or the things that they do. And so that's all this past, and then jumps back to the present. Ginko came to visit because he wants to go and look at the library, and the woman is resting at the time, so it's like, oh, go and look in the library. So they go into the library, and then all of a sudden, letters just start falling all around them. And you're like, what? And then you look, sentences and words and things are just falling out of the scrolls, and just like everything starts to shake, and all of these things letters and sentences just start flying around the room. And so Ginko and the old woman who are there are like, Ginko's freaking out. And he's like, we got to get out of here. And so they're running up the stairs like, oh my God, tell her something's going horribly wrong. The curse is escaping. And so they get out of the room, and the woman's there in like the first room outside of this underground library. They're standing there, and all of a sudden lines of text just spray out of the door and start flying all around the room and going everywhere. And Ginko's like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? What's going on? He's freaking out, which is, again, very different for him, which is another great thing about the story. And the woman's there is like, it's fine. What? And then all of a sudden you look around, and all these sentences like all over the wall, crisscrossing all over each other, running around, and then all of a sudden they just stop. And it turns out this has happened before, and they've coated the walls with glue. And what happens next, and they talk about this because they've gotten the curse out of the person, and they put them in the text, but the curse still exists in the text.
Okay.
And so not only has she had to write all of these, they've had to memorize every single one. Because eventually paper decays, so they'll have to put it in a new book. And so what she does is she then takes a pair of chopsticks and just peels a sentence and goes, book 23, chapter 2, paragraph 7, and throws it to the older woman. She grabs it and slams it into the scroll. And they just start peeling the sentences off the wall and putting them back into books.
That's crazy.
And it's this amazing visual of her doing this. And it's like, this is how they have to deal with this curse.
Yeesh.
But the sort of ending optimism is it's down to her leg. That's all that's left. She's like the third person to have the curse, and it was only starting at her leg. So she's the closest person to be able to be finished with it.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be done. She doesn't have to stay here. She can go out and she can see the world, and she can see these stories of Mushi that she's had to hear about, both the horrible tragedies, but also the interesting things that Ginko has talked about of what's out there, the amazing and beautiful things, and the weird things that he's seen. But that moment of just like, oh no, it's escaping. And it's like, don't worry, the walls are covered in glue. And it's like, what? That's the sort of reality of how weird these things can get.
Yeah.
That's another thing that makes this really special. It's like we have this very spiritual one in The Green Gathering, and another one that we didn't really talk about, The Pillow Path, which is all about dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We have these very medical ones like Light in the Eyelids and Soft Horns, which I don't think we'll talk that much about, but it's another great one of these things get in people's ears and then they can't hear.
Yes.
And the first part of it is like, oh, there's a mushi that'll get in someone's ear and they can't hear. It's like, yeah, because there's a mushi that will get in your ear and eats sound.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. And then the main story is about a different one that instead of eating sound, plugs up both of your ears and just constantly plays noise.
Yeah.
And drives you insane. And then also gives you horns.
Didn't quite understand that part, but yeah.
I think that's sort of like back to a traditional Japanese folklore trope. It's not so much meaningful as it's just a physical manifestation of the curse.
Yeah.
Again, this is very Japanese.
Yes.
I think that's another thing about Mushishi is if you want to read a story that's very Japanese, this is very Japanese.
Yes.
But you've got that sort of like medical drama there, or like it's almost like a detective story or a trying to solve this problem. And then you just have, hey, here's some weird stuff. The Sea of Brushstrokes, this curse that's being put into a book, but the sentences themselves are still cursed. Or Rain Comes and a Rainbow is Born, where the short version is this guy is trying to find a rainbow mushi because his father found one and kind of went insane, but also talks about it as like he held a rainbow in his hand and it was one of the most beautiful things he had ever seen because he was physically holding it. And so his son, after all this has happened, ends up going on a random adventure with Ginko as they try to find this kind of rainbow that his father saw. And it's just weird. But it's this story of, again, there's still this sort of human element of it. The Sea of Brushstrokes, you know, dealing with problems that you were born with that have nothing to do with you from decisions people made in the past, even good decisions, but you have to suffer for them. Rain Comes and a Rainbow is Born, trying to understand someone who suffered from this mental illness that you just can't understand because you don't have it, and trying to be a good child to a parent that cares about you but can't help you. Soft Horns, Light in the Eyelids, these disease states causing people to suffer immensely and just not being able to do anything to help them when they're in this horrible tragedy that you wish you could do something, but nobody knows what's going on. And in Soft Horns, the solution is incredibly simple, but nobody knows what it is. In Light of the Eyelids, it's not even talked about, but it's just, I think that's probably its weakest point, is it's just like, oh yeah, and now here's the medicine to solve it. But it's not about that. It's about someone taking care of you and then getting infected with it, and then the tragedy from that. The Green Gathering of just, hey, random chance happened. The whole reason this party was interrupted and the grandmother didn't get to go through the whole ceremony is a crow showed up and ate one of the people at the party who was dressed in a cloak because they were pretending to be like people, and a crow just shows up and bites one of them, and they all run away. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why? Just because. And every story is something unique and meaningful, and you can sit and you can really dig into it, or you can just enjoy the ride and be like, okay, that was cool, let's see what the next one is. It's such a great series. There's very few things like it.
Yes, I can't think of another one that's like it in this way. Yeah, out of all the ones I've read, I don't think there's too many that are completely one-off stories. There's a few that try to do that, but this one really does, like, okay, this is a good self-contained story. As you were saying earlier, you don't have to read them in order per se. It helps just because things will get hinted at, but for the most part, everything is its own story, and that makes it more interesting. Okay, I could read one chapter, put it down, come back later, because that story's over. I could take a break, do something else. Yep.
And if you have a story that you really like, you can just go back and just read that story, and that's the whole thing.
Yep.
It's not entirely without a through line. Certain themes that show up earlier on come back. The River of Life, that does come back in several other stories. There are a couple characters. The actual doctor in the one you've read, in the Traveling Bog, who buys the weird things that Ginko collects, he shows up a few more times.
Okay.
Of all the people in the series, from what I've read, he's the only character I remember coming back.
Okay then.
The woman in the Sea of Brushstrokes feels like she should come back, but I don't know if she does. The other thing about that story is it almost feels like this is where, when all the adventures were over, like, these two characters, you might see them meeting up again afterwards. After the curse is done, after the traveling is done, that sort of longing of after everything's finished, it'd be nice if we could get together again and see each other. Is the sense you get from the story. But the little doctor who buys things. He shows up in a couple other stories buying things, or there's one later on in book 3. I'm not going to talk about it at all because we didn't mean to cover it, but something in his storehouse that he's bought from Ginko ends up causing problems, and Ginko has to come back and like fix it. Even though there's no connection between any particular story in general, they always feel like they're part of the same world and they're part of the adventures, even though you could take any one of them out and you wouldn't lose very much other than you've lost a cool story.
Yeah, I could see that. But having read the first one, I kind of want to see what other stories there are.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to reading the next ones.
Do you have anything that you want to add or you want to say about this?
No, I think if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I like the idea of one-off stories, then this is probably the one to go. I think the only other time I've read stuff like this is more like the horror genre, where it's like, oh, there's one-off scary stories. But this is very much a one-off story of someone going around helping people.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is something like Sherlock Holmes short stories, or that kind of like mystery detective short stories of, oh, he just shows up when there's a problem and fixes it. And it's like, yeah, it's like horror and mystery have these kinds of stories a lot. Mm-hmm. And this is more of supernatural, not even like drama, just like exploration.
Yeah. That's probably a good way to put it.
Which is a very weird genre to have this be in, but it does it very well.
Yep.
As you can tell by the fact that I picked this and how much I've been talking about it, I adore this series. And it's been like we were talking about earlier. It's a series that I didn't put down because I didn't like it. It's a series I put down and like, I'm going to get back to this. And then I just got distracted.
Yeah.
From everything I've read, and probably now that I finish Shaman King, one of the things I'm going to do is finish reading this. And I've read up at least to book 4, maybe book 5, and it doesn't miss. There hasn't been a point where I've read a book and I've been like, I'm not as excited about this as I was the other ones. Mm-hmm. There are stories where I read them and I'm like, this wasn't really my kind of a story, but I get what they were going for. That certainly happens, but I can't think of an example of it. And every book will have a chapter where it's like, oh, that was so cool. My favorite story in this entire thing is in book 3 so far. And I was like rereading. I was like, oh man, I kind of want this to be in book 1 or 2 so I can talk about it. But I kind of want to not be in book 1 and 2 so I can talk about it next time.
Yeah.
And then book 4, I just finished reading book 3, but my favorite story was in there. But then there's like 2 others were like, oh, I forgot about that. That's in this one. Oh, this is really good. And then there's another one. It's like, I remember this, and I don't remember liking it a lot, but reading it again, now I really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You can just pick this up and read it, and even if you're not a fast reader, it's like you read a 45, 50-page thing, and you get a complete
story. Mm-hmm.
It's such a great series. And if you're not sure, just pick up book 1. And this series was super popular. We've talked about it a couple of times earlier on of somebody you know probably has this, or your library has this, or there's some way you can get it, or you can talk to someone and you can find it and you can get a hold of this series without having to put a lot of money down, or even just get the first book. And if you read the first book or the first chapter, you'll know if you're going to like this. You might not think the first story's great. I mean, I think you will because it's great, but you'll know if you want more almost immediately after finishing the first one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things because each story doesn't connect per se. There could be stories like, oh, I'm not a fan of this one, but maybe you'll be a fan of the next one.
Yeah.
Because they're all different. They're all unique. So maybe you have one that jives with you better than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while we've talked a little bit about most of them, I haven't even mentioned They That Breathe Ephemeral Life and The Veil Spore, 2 more from book 2, and we've barely talked about 5 of the other ones. Mm-hmm. We've only really talked about 3 in any detail.
Right.
And that's most of these 2 books, so there's still so much more to them, even just these first 2. And then there's 8 more volumes after that.
Yes.
So if you are interested in this and you try it, there's a lot here for you to grab.
Right.
And gravitate to. So absolutely, highly, highly recommend. Does it hold up over time? Like I said, I read it probably within a year or 2 of it coming out in English. Mm-hmm. And I reread it again this week, and I still adore it. Just as much as I used to. It's a very, very good series.
And I agree. Yeah. So if you're interested, definitely check it out.
Yep.
It's one we can both recommend.
Yay. Now I just have to get you copies so that you can read the rest of it.
Yeah.
But with that, that will be the end of our episode for this week. So thank you once again, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to reach us or follow us outside of this particular version of the show that you're listening to, you can find us and the things that we do on Blue Sky at Mudai Manga Book Club, on YouTube at Mudai Manga Book Club, or on Podbean or other podcast places, including now iTunes. Thank God. It took so goddamn long, but it's finally on there.
Great.
On iTunes or any other podcast or most other podcast platforms at Mudai Manga and Book Club. You can also email us at mudaimangabookclub@gmail.com. Please feel free to let us know any comments, concerns, questions, praises to high heaven for iTunes finally working. Oh my God.
That took a bit.
I worked on it for so long trying to get it set up, and then randomly I clicked a button and it finally worked.
Perfect.
In a day. Yes. I'm not stressed about this. You're stressed about this because I'm saying how stressed I am about this. Passing it on to you. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm so glad it's finally done.
It only took a few months.
It only took a few months. Oh my God. If you are on a podcast platform and you'd like to leave a review or comments there, we would love it. If you are on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. Just helps get the video spread out more to other people. And again, we'd love to hear from you all.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, we have reached the end of the episode. So, Louis, do you have something to recommend to everyone to go with all of our other recommendations that we have recommended this day of recommending?
So recently, Atlas, the game company, has started a music channel, sort of.
Oh, cool.
It's very bare bones still. I think they've only have 2 videos up. But what they are is they are vinyl sides of Persona 3 soundtrack and Persona 4 soundtrack. So you can go and listen to a select collection from Atlas themselves of various Persona game music. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. There's only 2 episodes. One, not even episodes. There are only 2 videos. I think the Persona 4 was just put up the other day. I don't think it's going to be a huge, we're going to put them up all the time. I think they're just going to put them up slowly as they go.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually really neat that it's just started, because when I saw it, it reminded me of Square Enix has a channel like that.
Yep.
And they have tons of their music up there, and they've started putting up performances and orchestra performances and weird mixes of it. But that it's just started.
Yeah, I'm subscribed to the Square Enix one, and they put up music constantly.
Yeah.
But these Atlas ones are 20 minutes each, so it's quite a few songs. It's called Atlas Game Music. It has, the logo is the Frost Demon guy.
Oh, yeah. They're little
Frost.
The little design with the Atlas logo above them. Yeah.
So
cool.
Definitely check it out.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I'm subscribing right now.
I realized that I know the Persona 4 music way better than Persona 3. And also maybe want to start playing it again. But I have too many other things I have to play.
Yeah. I'll get to it right after I finish the books I bought.
Yeah. And the books you haven't bought.
I did buy a bunch more. They were on sale. They were on sale. Most of them were 99 cents.
Okay. What about you?
So for me, I feel like I've covered a few of my different nerdy hobbies, but I haven't covered this one of my nerdy hobbies. So one of the things that I do, besides reading manga, speaking Japanese, playing video games, listening to rap music, one of my other hobbies is I do some tabletop miniatures, board games, war games, things like that. And I wanted to recommend a particular one called Battletech Alpha Strike. If you know Mech Warrior, this is the tabletop game that Mech Warrior is based on. The video games are usually called Mech Warrior. The tabletop games are usually called Battletech. But it's the same universe, same everything. Giant machines, think Gundams, but it's made in the US. Mm-hmm. Although some of it's ripped off of anime, leading to a huge lawsuit that caused the game to disappear for quite a while. Not getting into that. There's a specific version of it called Alpha Strike, which is this incredibly simplified version of Battletech. Because Battletech, the real tabletop game, is pretty in-depth and has a lot of things where you can have airplanes and hovercrafts and tanks and foot soldiers and your giant mechs and buildings and artillery and landmines and there's books and books of dozens and dozens of different types of units, of which each type there are dozens of types, and you can decide exactly what equipment is equipped to them, and you can plot this out based on the year in universe, what technology was available to each side. And that's cool, but that's a lot of work. Alpha Strike, if you get official things, the other nice thing about Battletech, it's very inexpensive. Official models are, like, you can get a pack of official models for about $30, pre-assembled with all their unit information for both versions of the game. A lot of the units and things, there's a website called Master Unit List that has everyone that's ever been created and all of its variants for free. But Alpha Strike, your unit is basically on a playing card size thing. That has all your information, health, weapons, everything that you need to know to play this. And you can basically just set up a board, put some terrain on it, pick some cards. You make it so that the cost of your units costs what your opponent does. And you can play a game. And in about 45 minutes, you can have this whole full game of your mechs stomping across the battlefield, blowing each other up. If you want to go super duper ultra cheap mode, you can just print them out. There are versions, official versions that are printable that you cut out and like fold over so they make a little standee. And all the unit cards are free. All you need to do is dig out some 6-sided dice from some of your old board games and draw some squiggly things on the table to represent forests or water or buildings. And you can play a pretty good tabletop war game with someone else for a couple of sheets of paper. And it's fun. The rules are simple, but there's enough strategy there that it can go really well. And if you want it to be a little bit more, the models are out there. Most of them are pre-assembled, but a lot of third-party ones that they just let people make exist out there. You can get all kinds of crazy designs. There's tons of stuff out there to play it, but it's easy, it's fast, it's cheap. Reason I don't play Warhammer. It's the reason I don't play 40K. Costs too much damn money.
Yes.
I like building, and so I miss that with Battletech because most of them are pre-assembled.
That is true.
But I can show up, teach you how to play this game in 5 minutes, and we can play the game in an hour, and then we can play it again, then we can play it a third time. It can be easy enough that you can just pick it up and play it, but if you want to really try and make it more competitive or more complicated or tell a story, there's so much in this world and there's enough in the game itself that you can really dig into it. If you want to get into tabletop war games, Battletech is one of the two that is like the best out there. And this is the simple one of the two that I really like, that are like, these are the two you should go to. This is the simple, easy, stupid cheap one. Like I said, couple pieces of paper, and you can play with what you need to do the whole game. There's a starter set that's like $20. Comes with just a couple minis, but it comes with playmats, dice, all the rules, and some nice cardboard sandies. Look a little nicer and are full color. You want to put in a little more. $30, you can get a whole unit that you'll need to play the entire game of like 5 mechs. But if you're interested in that, it is a fantastic system. Super easy, super cheap. I just think it's a great game.
Nice.
As for next week, we will be discussing
Delicious in Dungeon, Book 1. So chapter 1 through 7. This will be the first intro arc as well as the second arc of the second floor, which will make sense when we talk about the book.
And with that, everyone, thank you again for listening. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Peace.
Yes.
If you don't, stop. Until you forget about it, and then start again, and then stop again.
Wise words.
Why is words?
That's not what I said at all.
Because the reason. Why is words? Because words. Once again, thank you for enjoying this episode of the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast.
It's not over.
This week sponsored by...
We have a sponsor?
No, that's why I'm not saying anything, you numbskull.
Sponsored by nothing.
Sponsored by the sound of silence, our audience's favorite part.
They have a favorite?
We have an audience?